I mean, let's zoom back up to maybe like the tabloid, like headline level of this thing. And, I'll ask you the question like, okay, NAR settlement, like who's this going to hit the hardest?
Well, it's funny. I might surprise your answer. As it sits, it's actually going to hurt home buyers the most, I think. 1A is probably cruddy agents. And all due respect to everybody, if you're just bad at your job and you're not trying to get better, then you should have already, I'm not upset that you'll be out of the industry. I don't wish you harm, but I don't think you should be representing people in huge transactions that have monumental implications. You should go do something else. Now, if you're working hard and you're fully committed and you've just been struggling, that's a different group I'm talking to there. But I think it's going to, as it sits, it's going to really, really harm home buyers who are not fully understanding what's going on. I think it's going to harm bad agents. I think it's going to harm lazy leaders.
I'm curious why sorry to cut you off there. I'm curious why you think it's going to impact home buyers. Like, I guess maybe just differential, I kind of looked at this and thought, okay, maybe this is going to actually help home buyers because they will at least have to be walked through what's about to happen. And it's sort of like in a similar way to, hey, this is exactly what you're going to be paying on the, in the closing documentation.
Yeah. I mean, in that way, I think buyers should benefit. I think so many agents will be so poor with that documentation, like they have always been with required disclosures, like they've even been with listing agreements, like they've been with required brokerage disclosures and all sorts of things. Again, I'm not a hateful, angry, mean person. I just know statistically that most agents aren't very good, and that's what we're up against. Now, the reason I think buyers will be hurt is because there will be a default assumption that I've got to pay my own agent, and I'm either not going to do it, so I'm on my own, or I'm going to skimp, so I've got a pretty cruddy agent, or I've got someone that's got to do a ton of volume, so they can't really advocate for me, or I simply don't have the money to buy now because I don't want to do it alone and I don't have the cash. Now, I think some of that over time might get solved for through the financing window and through VA and things like that. But as it stands, the stated solution is going to create more problems than it's going to ever solve. So assuming some of those things get sorted out, obviously this has a significant negative impact on lazy onesie twosie agents that mostly only work with buyers. There's a lot of brokerages that haven't fully thought through the fact that they are almost entirely funded by that type of agent and that type of client. There's a lot of team leaders that have low-level training, and they're running a numbers game sweatshop of hammering leads that don't offer a lot of differentiation and unique value, which, again, provides a ton of opportunity for folks that will do those things. But I think there's going to be a real reckoning, not to mention the value gap that it could create. And I'll oversimplify this by saying, assume you have a seller and a buyer, and everyone's assuming that this new settlement means people aren't going to pay the same commissions. So you have a seller that says, nope, I'm not compensating a buyer's agent, but I'm also not dropping my price. And you have a buyer that says, if I have to compensate my own agent, I need a lower price. There's 1,000 ways we could talk about how we bridge that gap, but how many sellers do you know that are like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll just drop my price because I don't have to pay the agent? Well, what's the difference in it? If they think that, they're going to offer compensation. But if they're looking to make that gap up, so is the buyer. And now we have a bigger gap. We either have stagnation in the marketplace, we lose value because of that, we lose demand because of that, or some combination of the two. So we have a mess on our hands. We will see if there's any way our industry can educate the consumer well enough and fast enough for us not to wallow in that quagmire for years at a time.
Well, and so for anyone listening, like that is probably a key thing that you should be working on right now, because it, clearly we're talking about like, hey, there's a massive gap of like, participants in the industry, like consumers, like the end users of this industry, really understanding what is going on, right? So it's obviously just an obvious way that you could get an early lead on this situation by really mastering. And I maybe would go beyond saying, because I think a lot of people are using like sales language on saying like, oh, I need to work on my listings presentation, or I need to go on, whatever. Like maybe you should think about it like an elementary school teacher. Like, how do I explain to someone that doesn't know anything about this, like how this whole thing operates, so that at least they walk away from the conversation with you going, hey, I know something now.
Yep. And I would argue just lay that commoditization idea on top of that, right? How do I speak so a third grader understands me and gets really excited, not just taps out and is like, all right, fine, I'll sign. But like, oh, sweet. I wish my previous agent would have done this. I'm thrilled to sign that I want that type of advocacy. I'm thrilled to understand fiduciary the way you just explained it. I'm thrilled to get access to these resources and have exclusivity and not be absolutely brutalized by this other agent on the other side. Also, as an agent, hopefully you're hearing what Chris is saying and what I'm expanding on as an opportunity. Yes, there's a burden of adjustment and flexibility and learning and mastery, but with that comes huge opportunity. One of the other pages in the report, I talk about this idea of what I call the remnant, which is if 95% of consumers ran towards whatever fear realtors have of the worst case. Everybody's now hiring buyer's agents for like $100 just to open doors, or Zillow takes over the world, or Open Door wins the fight, whatever. If 95% of the consumers go that way, and let's just say 95% of the agents mindlessly, blindly run after them, I'm not going. I've been building a business for 20 something years now to have a dominant market presence, a dominant value proposition for the 5% remnant. And I'm just making these numbers up. I can't fathom it would ever be that extreme. But even if it was, this may not be true for everyone, but I'm in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. There's still plenty of opportunity with 5%. So I want to be the people that nope, I want to look someone in the eye, shake their hand, know that they know what the heck they're talking about. I don't want to have to do their job for them. I'll pay them to do it, but I want them to do it. That's who I want to be a value provider to be an advocate for, to have a long-term relationship with. And that's who I've always wanted. So in a way, this is the best market my business has ever existed in, where people are like, well, hold on, before I agree to your commission, let me know what I'm paying for, because I've heard things are changing. Great. A lot of times in the past, people are like, no, I know what you do. I have a friend, I don't want to talk. We have the best opportunity ever because people are finally going, hold on, what do you do and what do you charge? What a wonderful opportunity if you have an answer. And that's what Chris is saying. Hopefully you're working on your answer. Now, I wouldn't say we're spoiled. I would say this is one of the rare times where our hard work is really, I think, going to pay off because we've been doing this for 20 years. So our answer is, I can't wait to tell you. We've been doing this for 20 years. By the way, I would be a little bit concerned if you're the guinea pig on some other agent's first time out with a rep agreement. First time out trying to actually, do something unique and differentiated. Now, we're all going to have our competitive language, but there's a page of that document that kind of shows, it's a little bit off the cuff, but what are some of the elements of the agents that would go that 95% route? And what are some of the descriptive terminology of those of us that might stick around and try to dominate that remnant?